Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. It's your boy MongoSlade. Let's talk about WWE's newest releases, which they decided to do while I was in the shower and on my way to bed. So if I sound a little drowsy, then that's just kind of how it is. I don't have time to record it in the morning. So let's talk about this thing here. So we got, I think, 8 releases. You got John Morrison, Ashanti Theodonis, Top Dollar, Swerve, Tegan Knox, Shane Thorne, Jackson Riker, and Drake Maverick. All right, so let's get the easy ones out of the way first. Shane Thorne, Jackson Riker, it was only a matter of time for them. I mean, Shane Thorne wasn't even on television. Him being released is not that big of a deal. Jackson Riker, he was, he's like the JTG of this whole thing. He's like white JTG. Like JTG, after all those releases, he kept saying like, "Oh, I just don't answer the phone." He's just unavailable. He can't be fired. He's unavailable. So eventually they caught up to him. So he finally got hold of Jackson Riker, and now he's gone. Drake Maverick, of course, they fired him during the first round of cuts. He managed to save himself by cutting an impassioned promo. This time, I guess it wasn't enough. What can you really do with Drake Maverick? He's 4'11", really, really skinny. Yes, he has He has charisma. He can be plugged in a lot of different places in terms of doing comedy. And yes, I know that some people are still mesmerized by his feud with EC3, but that's not what this is. This is a different company where they're looking for big guys and not necessarily very, very, very small dudes. And they've used Drake Maverick in a lot of different spots in his run. They've used him as a manager. They've used him as a general manager. They've used him as a wrestler. They used him as a tag team partner. They used him as a comedy job guy. They've used him in every conceivable way. So, what was left? Making him fucking world champion? What really was left? There was really nothing for you to do. I get it that he's just not a WWE guy. He's not big enough. He doesn't have the muscle mass. It'll just never work. But he is an interesting performer who I actually enjoyed watching because he's a guy who's versatile. He can do a lot of different stuff, but he's not a WWE guy. He'll do well going back to Impact or something like that. So that's 3. Tegan Knox, never was a fan. She's injury prone and very, very bland. I was surprised she was even called up. I just didn't see the benefit or the talent in her. I know a lot of people were fans of hers and like her, and I know she probably has her own little Bayhive. I'm sorry to tell you it, but she was, bland as bleach. I just don't see the benefit. She's complete white bread, and there couldn't have been any plans for her. What could the plans have possibly been? She goes out there and wrestles matches. The girl with the shiniest wizard. Like, oh, really? The girl with no character. The girl with no personality. That's what happened. I do believe she'll probably be back one day, though. This is a suck ass time. We'll talk about that again later, but this is not necessarily a good time. See, once we got rid of all of those people, who else is left? You see, you got rid of Jackson Riker, Drake Maverick, Shane Thorne. Let's see, you got Hit Row. Hit Row is, of course, completely and totally embarrassing. WWE put all this effort and time into bringing up Hit Row. They did these vignettes where they kept showing that Hit Row was coming back and, Hit Row is going to be there. And then out of nowhere, they fired B-Fab. Just out of nowhere, just killed the gimmick completely, really. Because people were kind of like, excuse me, like you fired this chick in this group. What was the point in that? And then you just fired everybody in the group. Just fired the whole group. Like that's just wild to me. I think they wrestled probably 2 matches on all of SmackDown. The rest of the things that they did were ciphers as they rapped. And the raps weren't really getting over. I really had zero interest in what they were doing on SmackDown. I think that when the moment they became baby faces, it went off the rails. Hit Row was very cool. It was very swaggy at first, and then I think as it went along, and all they did was cut promos, rapping, it kind of got corny. Of course, that's no excuse to fire all of them. SmackDown was supposed to have been a fresh coat of paint where they could do something new, could do something different. And they were touting them as being sort of the next big thing on SmackDown. And then out of nowhere, they kept bringing them out there in front of podunk crowds full of, nobody towns. And they're not getting a reaction. It's like, yeah, you're dumping the rap group out there in Des Moines, Iowa. You don't take the rap group out to Butte, Indiana, or some silly stuff like that, and they're not getting a reaction. It's like, yeah, how about we wait until we get to like New York or Chicago or Philadelphia? And yeah, I get it. You have to get over everywhere. I get that too. But at least start them off with something. I just don't feel like they got a real chance. I think that Hit Row kind of got the shaft. They really get shafted. And I know Top Dollar has been all over WWE television. He was on Most Wanted Treasures. He was, being groomed. And I'm guessing a lot of this stuff with him online made the decision a lot easier. Swerve is an indie guy. Swerve will be fine. He was probably making bank before WWE showed up with the Brinks truck for him. He's going to make a lot more money now. And even though he hasn't wrestled much on SmackDown, he wrestled extensively on NXT. So his rate is going to go up. They're probably just going to reform Hit Row and do it on the independents and maybe do it in some other places. That ought to be fun. That ought to be great. And I think before I was saying maybe B-Fab wouldn't get into wrestling anymore. But I think if the rest of the guys are out there and they see that there's money in that group, they will do it. They probably will reform outside of WWE and do their thing there. And, there was some conversation. I remember Top Dollar saying that he initially wanted Leo Rush for the group. Like, that seems like it's a perfect setup to me, right? And 60 to 90 days or whatever the hell it's going to be for Leo Rush to bring in Top Dollar, Swerve, and etc. For AEW. Of course, that's going to be a little sticky because Top Dollar had all those issues with the Young Bucks. And he had those issues with, the Acclaimed. And the AEW fan base does not like Top Dollar. I know Top Dollar isn't everybody's favorite guy. He's not everybody's cup of tea. Mainly because he's very outspoken. He also plays the victim, plays the race card. I think he made it easy on himself. And I think once they realized, hey, we're going to have to cut this guy or we're going to cut him, then the other two just went along with it. I don't think Ashanti the Adonis had a shot or a chance once they was going to get rid of Top Dollar. Swerve, I just figured if we're not going to take the giant, we're not going to take the 30-year-old rookie either. Even though Swerve is not that old. He's like 32 or something like that, 33 at the most, I think. I'm a big fan of Swerve. Swerve is going to make bank. He's going to get that. He's going to get paper. So he's going to be fine. He's a indie icon. He'll be okay. He's just like Keith Lee. He's going to be a guy out there who people are going to be throwing rose petals and money at his feet to come to their show because that's what they were doing before. And now they're going to want him on every podcast to talk about how WWE fucked them over and all that kind of stuff. He's going to, we'll see how all that goes. And there's going to be so much of that garbage going into the future. It's so embarrassing. And WWE just does this to themselves when they release all these people. And then these people end up, after the 90 days or whatever, they start doing hella podcasts talking about, oh, this was a stupid idea they tried to get me to do, or this is why I think I was fired, or this is what they're doing, or blah, 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 blah. And it just goes on and on and on ad infinitum. It just makes no fucking sense. Now let's finally, almost 10 minutes into this video, talk about John Morrison. And John Morrison is the guy who I keep seeing this. John Morrison could have been a main eventer. John Morrison should have been the main eventer. He should have been a top guy. John Morrison was a top guy at Lucha Underground. He was a top guy over here. He's a top guy over there. He won all these world titles, and he could have been a main guy for WWE. And I could have said to himself, like, do you know what we're watching here? We're watching John Morrison is almost 40. or I think he might even be 40. You know, the thing here is WWE is getting younger. And I know they're doing things that are counterintuitive to that getting younger concept, because Tegan Knox is not that old. And I don't believe Shanti Theodonis is that old either. But I think he also was in developmental for quite a while. So we're in a position with John Morrison where he's a veteran. You know, he's not going to be too damaged by being released. If he was such a big shot on the independents, you know, he can go back and continue being a big shot on the independents. So it's not really that big of a deal. I do think he got a bit of a raw deal in terms of how he was used. I agree that bringing him in as the Miz's buddy was fine. I think that was perfectly okay. I just think it went too long, and I think it got burnt out around the time of the Braun Strowman feud. It was just time to break them up right there. And now they put all this emphasis on Miz and Morrison breaking up. And we never got the feud because the Miz went and did Dancing with the Stars and stayed gone for like 4 months. So John Morrison was left in the lurch. He was like, oh, okay, well, I'll be here to feud with the Miz when he gets back. Oh, wait, the Miz is never coming back? The Miz is never coming back. So I mean, there it is. That's the only thing I got to say. But that sucks. And I don't think that being world champion in Lucha Underground or Impact means much of anything when those two companies are dead. I don't think being world champion of a dead promotion, if that dead promotion is not WCW or ECW, or to a lesser degree TNA or Ring of Honor, I don't really see being, oh, he was a world champion and blah, 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 blah. It's like, yeah, so what? You know, big fish, small pond. And a lot of what people really get into it with John Morrison is because he had so many years in WWE. He was a tough enough guy. And I would think that should have been, among anything, would have made him sort of family. As far as, you know, because they were integral in his training and integral in how he ended up being such a success. But he was a guy who got pigeonholed. You know, they pigeonholed John Morrison into being one kind of performer. And that's just what he turned into. You know, he's a comedy guy. And he hangs out with the Miz. And once they started saying that basically that was all he was known for, they never mentioned him being the Intercontinental Champion. They never mentioned him, you know, being very close to wrestling for the world title and being a world championship contender. When all those times that he was, right before he got canned the first time, or left the first time, however that went, they never mentioned any of that stuff. When he came back, all it was the dirt sheet. Let's talk about him and the Miz. It's all about him and the Miz. It was never about, hey, John Morrison was was a Intercontinental Champion and was very, very good at that. You know, former ECW champion was very good at that too. Was going out there killing it, having great matches. They never tapped into that. I do think that he has charisma. I do think that he can cut promos. I do think he's a fun guy. I'm not saying that he's a bad performer. The only problem is I don't think they really believe that anybody can believe in him. I think that if this is a business, if WWE was the business of go out there and have kick-ass matches, then yeah, John Morrison should have been a top guy, should have been the main event guy. But WWE is not about go out there and have kick-ass matches. Everybody should know that by now. WWE is about larger-than-life, cartoon characters, and that kind of stuff. Selling t-shirts, selling merchandise. You know, our kids going to want to play as you in video games. And I don't see that for John Morrison. So Morrison goes back to the independents and makes bank as being, you know, a highly sought after free agent. Likely, you know, he's possible he could go back to Impact, you know, go back to being Johnny Impact. Some people say, oh, I want Johnny Dynamite. It's like, sure, you know, you can load AEW up with all the 38-year-old, 15-year veterans you want. Go for it, you know. But what I meant earlier is that this is a terrible time because part of the reason why all this stuff is happening is due to the financial hits. We talked about this last time WWE did releases. And that's always going to be a mixture of things, of, vaccination issues, political not being Democrat and Republican, but who's head of talent relations at the time. John Laurinaitis probably says, I would never have hired this guy in the first place. Let's get rid of him. We can't really use this guy right now. Let's get rid of him, yada, yada, yada. And I do think that's what John Laurinaitis was brought in for. I think John Laurinaitis was brought in to take the heat. But, of course, the heat is only going to fall on Vince because everybody knows that all the releases and stuff has to be certified by Vince. So, John Laurinaitis is going to do the dirty work for Triple H. Wouldn't be surprised as soon as the cuts slow down and maybe even stop. You'll probably see Laurinaitis get moved to another position. And then Triple H will take over again. And they'll probably fudge it like Triple H got a promotion, which includes blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden, he's taking over again. And Laurinaitis is moved back to another back office to do some paperwork. It's the kind of stuff they do in offices. They bring a guy in just to be the hatchet man. And it seems like Laurinaitis is just that guy. He's the hatchet man. So he was brought in to do this, and he's doing a damn good job of it. And he's like, look, I think that it would be, and I saw somebody say this, and I actually had this idea myself. I don't see the point in them releasing people every few weeks. To me, that's almost terrorism. You have to let the performers that are on the contract. Now, there's going to be some people who sleep tight knowing I'm not getting fired. It's not a big problem. As long as you're not a headache, and as long as you're not sitting and catering forever, you're probably going to be pretty safe. So there's a lot of other people who are going to be like, I haven't been on TV in a month. Tony Storm, somebody like that. Somebody like Santos Escobar, who they sent home for months and months. Somebody like Timothy Thatcher, who hasn't been on TV in weeks. Samoa Joe, if they're firing people that they fired already before, Samoa Joe has to be on the chopping block, right? But again, why not fire the people who are, maybe you're negotiating contracts with them and they're asking for too much money, and you say, look, let's do this. Let's just let you out your contract early. Just get out of here. Just beat it. Your Kevin Owenses or your Kyle O'Reillys or somebody like that. If they're saying, hey, this is what I want to stick around, just look at that and say, why don't we just let you go right now? We'll just, no 90-day, just let them go right now. Fuck it. Let's get out of here. Let's get out of this thing. Let's get out of business together. That would be the first thing I would do, which is why I don't think that it's budget cuts. I think this stuff is kind of strategic. Well, I do think it's budget cuts. I think it's budget cuts in a real sense, that they feel like they spend too much money on talent, which they probably do, considering when you look at the people that they released, I think they released over 100 talent since COVID started. That should tell you that they had too many talent. Because guess what? I say this after every batch of releases, they still have too many talent. There's still too many. There's still too many. That you don't need 500 wrestlers. And you see people all the time saying WWE has released enough talent to start another promotion. That should tell you that there are too many. And so when people are getting really upset, like, I can't believe they're firing people while they're having record profits. It's like, they've got 8 different promotions inside of WWE. They cannot support this long term. But my thing is, and I agree with whoever said this, I wish I can remember who it was so I can give them the credit. Release everybody that you're going to release. If you're going to release 400 wrestlers at once, just do it and get it over with and not have to go through this again. What they're doing seemingly is constant evaluation and constant cuts, which has got to be a stressful time. Because now you got people who are in NXT, they're getting called up to do dark matches, and somebody's standing there with the sword of Damocles, and they just place it over your head and like, have a good match. And then, you go out there, you think you killed it, and they say, okay, we're going to call you up to Raw. You're like, yes. And then 2 weeks later, you're up on Raw, and they're showing vignettes, and then the vignettes stop. Like you're Elias or something. They show vignettes, and the vignettes stop. Then they don't even mention you anymore. Then they put you on the release list. You're like, wow, what the fuck? What happened? How did I get from, hey, you got a job, definitely come here, we're going to do this storyline with you, to you no longer have a job? How do we get from here to here? That's the point that's fucking with me is you have to know, and I do believe somebody else said this, that the left hand might not know what the right hand is doing. That, the right hand being creative is doing a thing, and then the left is like corporate coming in and saying, oh yeah, you were using that guy, sorry, I fired him. Too bad. I would think at that point somebody would be there in the middle and to say, hey, they are doing something. At least let them finish this up. They literally started hit rolling a storyline and then fired all of them. So you wasted valuable television time that you could have used towards somebody else that you were actually not going to fire. So that tells me that either A, they're not really putting that much thought into these people who are being fired. They're just doing constant evaluation and constant cuts, which is not, the best thing in the world. But it also goes to show how long they went without watching NXT and without, keeping a pulse on what NXT is doing. Because as Triple H went through and hired all of these people, and a lot of these people that, are being cut are Triple H hires. As these people are being cut, it seems to me like Vince and Nick Khan might be seeing them for the first time. Like they're trying to get a feel for them to see what kind of things Triple H has been bringing up in here. And then they're kind of like too old, too indie, too much of a headache, constantly, on some bullshit, like Top Dollar. He seemed like the right kind of guy for them. Big football player guy, seemed to be very excited to work for WWE, but he was a heat magnet in terms of all the stuff that he really started online. And, maybe they just said, fuck it, we don't need that. Same thing with Jackson Riker. It's like, we don't really need that. So I get it. I just want to know what's the angle. What I wish they would just come out and say, this is what we feel like is a healthy roster in terms of financials. We got to have this roster be financially, it has to make sense financially. We're going to have 3 brands, but the 3 brands are going to have, X, Y, and Z. And of course, people are going to say, oh, they're going to keep doing rematches and firing fresh talent. It's like, would you rather, all right, let's pose this question. If you got this far into the video, let's pose this question. Would you rather these guys get fired and have the opportunities to go somewhere else and make more money, be forced to sit in catering where they're going to be miserable, or be forced to do jobs for other people, which is going to probably make you miserable? Because I can tell you there's a lot of people who are upset about Cesaro, for instance. Cesaro is a guy who they still use him. They haven't fired him. They seem to like him. But he doesn't win that. He doesn't win that often. They use him. He gets some momentum. They kill him off, and then he goes off TV for a little while, and they kind of bring him back. He's mostly a tag team guy, solid mid-card hand. Seemed to be like a new version of Tito Santana or something like that. And they just kind of let it without the title run, and they just kind of, or he was U.S. champion, but he was a heel. And he just kind of let it run, let it ride. And people are absolutely made miserable every time Cesaro does a job. They just hate it. They hate to see it. But would you rather he got fired? And for me, the answer sometimes is yes. Some of these people, they probably are better off outside. I'm a big fan of Swerve. I really am. I thought that he could have been a lead pipe block for WWE. But I already know that, WWE is bullshit. And they do bullshit all the time. So I'm good with him getting released. I'm fine with it. He's better off going back to the independents where he can continue being a star, where he was a star before, and pretending Hit Row never happened and NXT never happened. Or, only using that to boost up his price, his asking price for his next contract and his next stuff, his next deals. Rather than him coming out there and just being, beat to death by some Ryback kind of guy that, John Laurinaitis and Triple H and all them have fallen in love with. I would much rather he just go out there and do his indie thing. To me, it doesn't make that much of a difference. I'm not that emotionally invested in this. Because firings will happen, and I know that the world economy is not quite, right, which I think another thing is people don't discuss. They talk about WWE making all this money. They don't know that WWE probably spending more money than ever too, and it's pretty necessary. They run it in some very expensive places. New York is a very expensive market to run in. California is a very expensive market to run in. There's a reason why AEW avoids certain places, and they have been avoiding a lot of places. Like, you've seen people, you've probably heard about it. They say, oh, AEW won't run on the West Coast. Why aren't they running California or anything like that? It's very expensive to run out there. They're not. I don't think they've been west of Las Vegas yet. But they've hit Chicago 6 or 7 times. They're always in Philadelphia. You know, so and of course Atlanta and Jacksonville. They're always in Florida and stuff. But they're taking their time. You have to watch the entire world. Wrestling is a small microcosm of what's going on in the world right now, where the cost of different items is going up. Inflation is a real thing. So I'm not surprised. And this might actually be a good thing. It's a good thing for them to trim the roster. It's fewer people for them to fuck over and fuck with. A lot of the people that we kind of, like, if I was a fan of Keith Lee or Swerve from the Independents, you get them back. Those were your guys, and you getting them back. What's the big deal? So now I can finally go to bed. All right, like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel, donate to the channel. Thank you guys for your time, and I'll talk to you guys later.